Okay, so this video is going to be over factoring with some problems with the GCF. So we're going to start here with example number 1. Okay. Now, not every single problem that we do with factoring is going to have a GCF, but these two will focus on that. But the first question you're always going to ask yourself from now on out when you're factoring is there a GCF? So you need to look at each of the numbers in the quadratics, 12, 6, and 18. And ask yourself, is there a number that would divide we could divide each of these by? And my hint is for that is look at the smallest number between the three, and you see it's a 6. So ask yourself, what are the numbers that multiply to 6, and see if those numbers then divide. So if I go, well, 6 multiplies, so if I do like a little tree over here on the right, the numbers that multiply to 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3, and then it'd just be what go backwards, 3, 2, and then 6, 1. So basically 1, 2, 3, sorry, 1, 2, 3, and 6 are the numbers that multiply to get me 6. So well, that's what we're going to try. I always like to start with the biggest number in that list that I have and work backwards, because if it's the biggest one, then we're going to want to take out that biggest one. So I'm going to start with 6 here and check, does 12 divide by 6? Well, you should be like, yes, 12 divided by 6, that gives me 2. Okay, good. That one works. Now it's got to work for everyone, though. We know 6 divided by 6 works because we would get 1. And also, does 18 divide by 6? You should be like, yeah, 18 divided by 6 is 3. So boom, right there, you would say, yeah, 6 is my GCF. Now, when we do that, though, we're going to want to make sure we take it out. So we're going to write 6 times, now just like we did, 12 divided by 6 gets me 2x squared. Okay. Negative 6 divided by 6 is working backwards here. We took it out. Negative 6 divided by 6 is a negative 1. And then we'll still have that x. Then we go negative 18 divided by 6 is a negative 3. Okay, and now we have that part. Now, we're not done yet, okay? We need to factor the inside part now, okay? But the 6 needs to make sure it's still in your answer, okay? So just remember, if you want at the very beginning, you can write, after doing that, you can say 6 times your 2 parentheses parts, and then that way, when you have your answer right there, you have the 6 in there, because that 6 doesn't go away. If it goes away, then it's not equal. They won't be equal to each other. Now I'll go about factoring the rest of this as you have before. So generic rectangle and diamond, okay? Remember, in the bottom left, you're going to use your 2x squared now. The top right is going to be that minus 3. And the bottom of your diamond is going to be that negative 1x. And that top of the diamond is going to be the 2x squared times the negative 3, which is a negative 6x squared, okay? Now, when doing this one, you got to figure out what multiplies to 6 and adds to negative 1. Well, I already made my list over there, actually. So it's going to be 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Okay. Now we know one of them has to be a positive and one of them has to be a negative. So which one would get me to 1? Well, that would be a positive 2 and a negative 3. But they also both need x's. Okay. So then you go back and you fill that in your chart. And oops, my rectangle isn't big enough. And now you go about factoring. So I'm going to start with the bottom one here. 2x squared and a 2x, just looking at those two. What's the GCF? Well, they both have a 2, so we can take a 2 out. And they both have at least 1x, so we're going to take just the 1x out. Now I'll go for the next box. There you go. So 2x times what is 2x squared? Well, that is just x. Okay. Then working the one above that, 2x times what is 2x? Well, that would be just a positive 1. Remember, you got to write your plus sign. Then go for that last box here in the bottom right. X times what is a negative 3? Well, that would be a negative 3. Then check for that top right. A positive 1 times a negative 3, does it give me negative 3? And yes, it does. So then you go back up here, write your answer in. So we have x plus 1 times 2x minus 3. But I still have that 6 there, and that needs to be in the answer. Please don't forget that, otherwise it won't be correct. Okay, and that highlighted part is then your answer. Okay, so here's another example here. Remember, the first question you need to ask yourself, is there a GCF? Okay, that's the question here. And in this case, you should be like, oh, I'm looking at 10. It's the smallest number, okay? What multiplies to 10? Well, 1 and 10, 2 and 5, 5 and 2, and 10 and 1. It doesn't matter. I mean, they're going to repeat and stuff, but going through there. So start with your 10. Do each of those divide by 10? Well, 90 divided by 10 does, okay? 45, does that divide by 10 evenly? No, 45 divided by 10 is 4.5. So we're not going to use 10, okay? Now try 5. 90 divided by 5. Yes, that's evenly. That one works. 45 divided by 5. Yes, it works. It ends in a 5, so it's going to divide by 5. And 10. We know 10 divides by 5 because that's what we already tried. So 10 is going to be our GCF here. Okay, so we're going to factor out that 5 right away. So 90 divided by 5, you got to know what that is. That is 18. Okay, if you need to, just use a calculator. And then you still have that x squared. 45x divided by 5 is a positive 9x. Okay, and then a negative 10 divided by a 5 is a negative 2. Okay, so now we have that new part. Now it makes these numbers a lot smaller. I would way rather have smaller numbers. So that's what the goal is of the GCF. Now remember, in your answer, I'm going to write it down here below. We need to make sure we have the 5 times R2 parentheses. I would write that out so you don't forget it. Okay. Then now you can use your generic rectangle and your diamond. Okay, and remember, you're going to use that new part you got. So 18x squared is now going to go in the bottom left. Top right is going to be a negative 2. The 9x is going to go in the bottom of your diamond. Then you multiply the 2 in your generic rectangle in the diagonal to get the negative 36x squared. Now you need to ask yourself what multiplies a 36 and adds to a 9. So we know what multiplies to a negative, so one needs to be a negative and one needs to be a positive. They both need x's, okay? That's something we've been practicing. So 36, what do you say 1 and 36? Would that work for either of those? No, that's never going to get us anywhere close to 9. Well, 2 and 18. It's closer, but it's still not close enough. Okay, if you flip-flop those there, it won't work. 3 and 12. We'll check. If you put a 12 in for negative 3 and 3 in for positive, you're going to get negative 9. Well, that's really close, so just flip them. So we need a negative 3x and a positive 12x. Okay, so those are going to go in our box now, or in our generic rectangle. Okay, and now we go about factoring. So I'm going to start by going up and down. 18x squared and a negative 3x. Well, 18 and 3, they both can be multiplied by 3. That's the highest number that goes into both of those. So I'm going to take a 3 out, and they both also have an x. We're going to put an x. Okay, so then you ask yourself, 3x times what would give me 18x squared? Well, that's going to be 6x. 3 times 6 is 18. X times x is x squared. Now go for the top one. 3x times what is a negative 3x? Well, that's a negative 1. And then for that last box, you're going to have 6x times what is 12x? Well, that's a positive 2. Okay, then check, is negative 1 times 2 a negative 2? And yes, it is. So now you go through and fill this out. 6x minus 1, and then 3x plus 2. Now you notice I already had my 5 there because that needs to be in the answer. So that highlighted part is there. If you do not have that 5, you are not going to get full credit because it's not equal. Okay. If you have any questions, please let me know and we can go over more of these.